Hey, we're back. It's your movie review, man. It's me, Jeff Johnson, and
Claude Fetier.
we're back to review another Amazon original for you. It's Sylvie's Love. And yes, we were having a lot of laughs about it. Pay attention, Sylvie's Love. Don't mess it up like Claude and I have messed it up names 5 times in a row. It's not Sylvia. It's not Sophie. It's Sylvie. So can I just throw that out right away for all those in our audience who really love our show, whose name's Sylvie, that it's the most wonderful and beautiful name ever. For everybody else who's not named Sylvie, why did they name the movie Sylvie? That's not even easy to say. Why? I don't know. But Claude, Sylvie's Love.
Okay, well, Sylvie's Love is basically a period of a love story that takes place in 1950s America, and we are introduced to Sylvie Parker, who's played by Tessa Thompson. She plays a young lady who's helping her father out at his music store, and after a cute meet, she meets Robert Holloway, who is an aspiring jazz performer, and basically begins a love story. Both of them are creatives. They both have dreams, and it's about how they try to navigate, getting their dreams, trying to find love, around 1950s America. And so that's the setup of the story. So what did you think?
Well, I thought it was a nice love story, a nice straight ahead love story. I always get it wrong, so I'm not going to try to tell you the sequence of the classic boy meets girl, boy loses girl, blah, blah, blah. The one benefit of a nice part about it is not about boy meets girl, it's about girl meets boy. For my perspective, it really is, both in its title and in its execution, a story about Sylvie and Sylvie's love. And it's really kind of from her perspective and how she's navigating this love story. And it's a Black woman, in a period piece, but again, isn't focusing on the times. The period piece aspect of it is really nice because it adds to the whole romantic love story aspect of it being 1950s Black New York. So if you don't know anything about it, you're just like, wow, this looks great. This has a feel to it that's unique and fresh to me, but yet I know it's in the past. Between set design and costuming, and I'm sure that they had to use visual effects, to make the city skyscraper just right. When you pan up, the building's got to look right, but they did it in such a seamless and excellent way. And in fact, as I recall, I think a lot of the shots that you do of the streets, they filtered it good to make you feel old, right? And in this era that we live in now, of everything being shot digital, and then you've heard me on our show. I both love technology and then hate it. I love, I'm a digital guy. I'm an analog guy in the digital world. It's nice to throw a nice filter on there and make us watch the thing and then make us feel like what we're watching is authentically in that time period because of the way they filtered it to make it seem like it's an older film. Just nice touches. And then, like I said, the costumes and clothing. And since he's a jazz man, there's something about jazz that you kind of want it to be in the past, right? And, he's an aspiring jazz man, and he's talking about some of these artists who he wants to be like, but he's almost talking about them in a contemporary sense, right? He's asking about their albums that may have just come out in the 50s. So that's cool. All of that atmospherics is nice. And I tell you, during these very challenging times that we're watching this thing in, I was happy just to see a nice love story, and I was happy to see a nice Black love story. Hollywood has no idea, and Claude, you know, I've talked about this many times, maybe not on the show. Hollywood has no idea how many Black love stories that they're just, you know, they're just missing out on it. They're doing without. They're just doing without. We've talked about that many times. They certainly can't handle Black sexy. They think they can. And they think, you know, between Black exploitation films of the past or exploitive music videos, whatever, but they just have no idea. They have no idea. And they don't have enough on screen to get an idea about it. So what I want to say about it, it's a very straight ahead love story. And I was happy for that. You know, some might look at it and say, well, I wanted something else or some more. If you wanted some more than a straight ahead love story, well, then maybe you're just not going to get it. But for me, that part of it being the Internet Movie Database listed as drama, music, romance. Yeah, I don't think there's that much drama, and I don't think that there's that much music in it. The fact that he's a musician brings in the atmospherics of jazz and the jazz parts about it, but it's just a straightforward romance. Other things, you know, I like Tessa Thompson, so I'm really trying to see her, you know, do some things. And this is a pretty good example for doing some things. I won't say, you know, I haven't received my greatest, the Tessa Thompson performance that I'm waiting for yet. But I think this is a really good performance of, again, this type of a character, a love story that's from her perspective about a young woman. The way you described it is it's essentially a summer of love story, right? Because she meets this young man in one summer when her fiance is away. I missed that part of why her fiance was away. I don't know if you caught that detail.
Korean War. I believe it was Korean War.
Was it Korean War? Sure.
Yeah.
It kind of implied that, but then they didn't hang on it very heavy at all. Again, back to it's a period piece, but they don't spend a whole lot of time on the period.
They don't, because I think when she introduces it, I mean, at this point, you're sort of in a way questioning if, number one, if she's really in a relationship, and did she just say something in terms of an obstacle? But go ahead. I'm just, yeah.
No, because I'm gonna kick it back to you before I go on too much longer. I was just pointing out that the distinction I would make is, again, a lot of classic romance stories. There are many, many romance stories about the summer of love. They met a lover for the summer, but it wasn't gonna last because of X.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Well, X is usually the summer's gonna be over. This story, they just pile on a couple other extra elements, right? Element one, her fiance's away and he eventually is gonna come back, but we don't know when. Pile on top of that, they're both ambitious and trying to advance in their careers as creatives, which again is another excellent thing where she is a creative. She loves television, and she gets a break where she gets an opportunity to be behind the camera as a Black woman in television, working for a Black woman in television. And that's an excellent break for her. And so that's wonderful to see, you know, that aspect of the story, again, without it spending a whole lot of time on just that one issue, because it's not about that issue. The whole movie is about the romance and the romantic empowerment of this young Black woman, right? So even, you know, if we want to talk about what it is to be in the early days of television, right? That those end up just being wonderful atmospherics and background to the story, because it really is about how Sylvie, the reason why you and I get confused and keep saying Sylvie's choice, because it's really about all the choices she makes. So that's what I was going to say about it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was like, you hit on basically everything that I was thinking. I definitely thought that, you know, in terms of a period piece, it was just, you know, definitely in terms of atmosphere, things on the surface, it was a beautiful, beautiful movie to look at. The way that it was shot, the production design, the attention to detail. I honestly felt that I was, you know, confidently not necessarily just watching a movie that takes place in the 1950s, but that in essence, if we had been in the 1950s, this would have been like, you know, sort of like a movie we dreamed of seeing. It has all the elements of, you know, just sort of like, you know, Hollywood romantic melodrama period piece, except you have people of color in it. And it's not like all those people of color were going to invest less money. No, they matched everything up. The sets look great. Recreating the historical time period. I'm convinced in some of the scenes they may have just taken some, you know, like did some digital stuff with some documentary footage. I mean, you just, you know, it looks absolutely amazing. And I did not, you know, in any way just, you know, just excellent in terms of that. I mean, it does a lot better job than a lot of movies that are recreating the 50s. It felt natural. I honestly could, you know, damn near smell the, you know, the cigarettes and and taste the, you know, Coke from the bottles. I mean, it was just, you know. So in terms of the world building, it was absolutely, you know, amazing. A beautiful couple. I mean, we're basically, for the most part, we like Sylvie Parker. We like, you know, Robert Holloway, and you know, we basically, you know, for the most part, we are on board. I would say, though, I mean, you know what, it is a straight love story. I would say there are a number of dramatic elements because of some of the situations that the characters are in. And it's not that they're trying to necessarily milk a dramatic situation, but for the most part, they're likable characters, but there are certain things that they do which are not, you know, just on the surface, you're like, oh, I really like you, but, you know, should you be dating somebody if your husband's in the Korean War? So so they're flawed, you know, to a certain degree, they're flawed characters, and I'm fine following a flawed character. You can give me a flawed character, I could still be fascinated with them. You sort of take, you know, just some points away because you're like, oh, you really, you know, and it plays with the whole idea. Usually love stories, you are completely on board with the character. Here you're just sort of like, there's a little bit of peppered parts like, oh, should we want to see them get together?
Correct.
Know? So, I completely, you know, I completely rock with that. That being said, you know, I guess yeah, I'm not necessarily, you know, I'd honestly say that within the plotting of this and the storytelling, again, there's certain things that the characters do that I'm not a fan of, and I guess as the story went on, there were certain things that were, you know, it was just like just sort of got in the way of completely liking them. But I understood what the setup was. But I had to honestly say that as the story went on, they were doing things that for the most part just you know, I just, yeah, got me questioning who they were to a certain degree, thinking, okay, they're, you know, maybe not the nicest people in the world per se. But I think, you know, we're not archetypes of characters in real life. People are nuanced. You know, people are this. So that part didn't bother me. I think towards the end, there were probably a few of the decisions where I just sort of felt like, okay, this part sort of doesn't make sense to me. And you know, it just sort of, it took a lot for me to put my head around it. So there were definitely, like, you know, I was sort of in love with them in the beginning, and at the end, I was just sort of like, okay, you know, and it was a you know, just you know, rough landing, and just like just sort of wish the story had taken different directions. But I'm not here to rewrite the movie. I'm just here to for what it is. So there were certain things there were things that were happening later on I did not care for.
Yeah, there were definitely parts of the story where they're like, well, it's not going to be a typical romance story because Sylvie makes some choices that, like you said, that aren't all. So she's not your perfect heroic character. You know, the credit that I give to this is that it makes her maybe a realistic character, which again might make it therefore less of a, you know, a typical enjoyable standard romance movie where your character is good and the circumstances around them are bad, but she's always good and she makes the right choices in this tough situation. No, she just makes some choices that are like, hey, she does what she wants. And that we in the audience might say, well, that's not very nice. Like starting off the fact that, you know, she has a summer of love while her fiance is away. And yeah, it is worse if he's away for the Korean War. It wasn't really clear to me where he was at because, you know, she was, you know, certainly her mom was a debutante, you know, finishing school instructor. So her mom was teaching her to be fancy and roll in the high crowd, even if maybe they weren't really in the high crowd, because dad owned a record shop / used electronics shop. So mom was kind of posing, right? Or dad married well, right? You know, maybe mom is of money for Black people in the 1950s in New York. And mom was training, she ran a finishing school, so she was training young women how to operate with the upper crust. But again, I like how the fact, though, that the film didn't spend a whole lot of time on that. They could have done a smidge more. I thought might have been more, you know, they didn't have to be stereotypical about it. But it's like some of the aspects that make this film interesting and good are that they don't make the traditional choices in films.
Yeah.
You know, mom and dad are the king and queen, and you're dating an artist. And so they're never going to let you get with a starving artist. You got to get with a rich guy. We've seen that story a million times, right? This movie doesn't hang heavy on that. It hangs just a little on it, but not heavy on it. That's not the main thing.
Yeah.
That's not the main reason why they don't get together. In fact, it's really nice. Mom again is a finishing school instructor, but it's never really implied that she's of money or that she herself is upper crust. She's just trying to train her daughter to behave like that. That they could have leaned on a little bit heavier, I think, and they didn't. They backed way off. They just had mom have that just enough to be in opposition to their romance, which we see in every story. And then they back way off. And then what makes this not a perfect film is that mom totally disappears. There's a certain point in the film where mom just, you know, it's in the editing and you know, they left some stuff on the cutting room floor. Like you said, we're not going to rewrite the story for you, but you know, mom plays her role of the disapproving parent where dad is not a disapproving parent. That's cool. That, you know, I mean, we've seen that in other movies before, in other stories before, but you know, dad who runs the record shop and hires, that's how they get together and have the summer of love, is that he takes on a job at the record shop where Sylvie's at because he spotted her in the window. And he needed the money because he's an aspiring artist, but he's not really making enough money at that. And that's how they meet, and that's how they have their summer of love while her boy or her fiance's away. And dad is kind of likes this guy, hardworking. Dad wanted to be an artist himself in his younger days, so he sees some of that in him. It's just mom looks at him as not at her level. But my point is that right when mom plays the typical role of disapproving and saying you can't see that boy again, mom is gone. I mean, there's no closure to the mom character at all. I don't even think they say whether mom, you know, dies or not. That I don't think they even say it.
Yeah, you're right. She disappeared, and I guess the issue wasn't a big issue for her because I guess her striving to be a creative. I mean, I guess she was okay. So mom fulfilled, I guess, in a way, a plot point. But you're right. She disappears, and I guess another interesting thing is that she was played by Erica Gimbel, who ended up playing, you know, in the TV fame as Coco. So you have her, you know, sort of like navigating her daughter away from the artist. I just thought was pretty, you know, this was just pretty cute. But you're right, she disappears because
she totally disappears
because we know that Sophie is going to definitely, you know, pursue everything. But you're right, that is a little bit because
it's a gap.
There's a little more in terms of the father, in terms of, you know, his role in the story.
Yeah, it's a gap. So, and why is it a gap? Yeah. Again, it's one less thing that, you know, again, you could have Sophie struggling against the way she was raised, right? Struggling between wanting to be like her daddy, who wishes he was a saxophone player and was more of an artist and wouldn't go achieve his goals, versus mama, who's just trying to look like she's proper and fancy. None of that. The whole trying to live up.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say the whole trying to live up to proper and fancy, which we see maybe too much in other stories, is gone in this film. I'm not saying that they had to do the same thing everybody else does, but this film says whoosh, whoosh, they just cut it off. She doesn't struggle at all. There is no I'm trying to live up to daddy. There's no I'm trying to live up to mama. There's any of those typical things that people go through in real life and that we've seen a million times in movies is just gone from this movie. Once mama does the disapproval, you can't date that boy, we don't see her again. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And like you said, you sort of have to try to, in essence, sort of fill in the gap. I guess we figured because we come to find out that her husband is somebody who's, family's a financially mover and shaker.
Right.
That part of the finishing school, aside from making the ladies the best version of themselves, is to hopefully marry.
Help them marry well.
To marry well. There you go.
Help them marry well. Which again,
but I'm going back to parts of the story because we were talking about, again, just certain things that we didn't care of. The one thing that I sort of had a problem with was the fact that they introduced the idea of the husband arranging some type of business deal, which is probably realistically what a number of businesses had to do, where he's basically, there's a white company he's working with, they have to clean up their image, and so he's taking on the contract to sort of take that. And I'm sure, I'm sure businesses had to deal with it. My only, I guess, sort of issue with that idea was was it because he was actually going through something like that, or was it something to put in so they, the husband who seemed to be a really nice character has some type of flaw.
Right.
And I think if that what the situation was, they really didn't need to, because I think the love for her career and the love she had for the jazz was enough of an obstacle that we didn't necessarily have to, sort of like poo-poo on her husband, to say, well, he did this, because I'm sure the reality is a lot of people had to take on those type of assignments. So
correct.
You don't have to artificially. I'm not saying that's what was happening, but that was sort of one of the things, that I sort of felt was, just I did not 100% buy it,
Right. They didn't have to artificially villainize him. Mm-hmm. A love story like this, it can be enough to say, what's up? We were not a semi-arranged marriage, or we were, a good-looking couple, and your mom is trying to get you to marry someone who's got some money and marry well, and I'm trying to marry a woman who, can look good by my side and represent me as I move up in the world. But you found a passionate love over the summer, and our love is not as passionate. That could be the whole drama itself of dealing with the realities of, hey, you actually fell for somebody else. Let that be the whole conflict we deal with. You don't have to make me into the villain or some kind of Tom or poser who's trying to move up in the world, because the film isn't about keeping it real or being real. It's strictly about Sylvie, a young woman having to make choices in her life. She gets a chance to make a career choice in her life that other Black women have never had an opportunity to do before. That's put in there. That's cool. Mm-hmm. And she has to, and she wants to pursue that and push forward. And her lover he's on the come up. He'd already made a sacrifice to come to New York to go achieve his dream. In fact, he inspired her to keep moving forward because he had a tragedy in his life, and he told the story about because of tragedy in his life, he decided he was going to just pack up everything and move to New York and be a jazz man. That inspired her so much to say, oh, well, when I have a tragedy in my life, when she did have a tragedy in her life that happens later in the film, she's like, oh, well, then I'm definitely not letting go of my dream, just like he taught me. But then that brings up the thing, well, if you're going to follow what somebody taught you, aren't you really in love with that guy? Why aren't you with him?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And that had to a certain degree, that adds a certain amount of drama to the situation, because for the most part, the husband has been, for the most part, a very stand-up guy. And the point in which he makes that decision, it again makes you less sympathetic, but in terms of being a cheerleader for an artist, one can definitely, sort of see it. a little jacked up, but one can see it. And but it's a good thing that you mentioned the husband. I mean the boyfriend, because the whole idea of sacrificing, she in essence has to sacrifice something in the relationship at the beginning, and then which I think makes sense and was very realistic. The sacrifice that he does later on is very problematic for me too, and then that takes away, that take away, just again in terms of likability, to the point where I was really a little annoyed, So, but
they give us aspects of these two characters that make them both, not as likable, right? Like, whoa, with Sylvie, it was just kind of like, hey, you gonna cheat on your boyfriend, your fiance, and then later it's like, whoa, you're just gonna cheat because you can. Like, she gets an opportunity to, hey, let's just have a one night stand, even if maybe he's not interested in that. So A+ for a story about a young woman making choices and her empowerment, and a C- on, well, she's not our shining hero as much. I thought it was cute. She has, her fast cousin, played by AJ Naomi King from How to Get Away with Murder. Again, the costuming, makeup, and set design was so good I did not recognize her almost till the end of the movie.
Yeah, and when we're introduced to an interesting bunch of characters, so the other side stories are also, for the most part, very much engaging.
Yes, yes. All the people in the two of their respective creative worlds. Her trying to move into television and rise as a television producer, and all the TV people around her, and him trying to navigate the New York jazz music scene and the music production scene, and trying to break out, trying to go from a member of a jazz band to being his own solo artist. And I like the fact that, again, the film did not spend all of its time trying to chase the advancement of their two careers and technically what does it take to be successful, and then if the woman's successful, will the man feel bad about that? I mean, that's in there, but they don't spend a whole lot of time doing the same thing everyone does. To your point, choices are made that still make you say, well, that makes me like the characters less, so why did you choose to do that? Why? Well, they do make choices. They make real life human being choices that you'd go back and say, well, now I don't like you as much. If that was your friend, you'd be like, homegirl, you're my friend, but that was kind of shady what you just did right there.
Yeah, and even some of the human being choices were a little crappy. But again, I don't watch stories to see people who are 100% stoic.
Right.
I gotta say the thing that the boyfriend does, really pissed me off. But I sort of wish they had gone a different route. But that's not, again, not my job.
Right. And I didn't mind is that some aspects of that are in the standard romance. They just are. Boys got to meet girl, and they got to break up for some reason. They get back together, and they break up one more time for some kind of superficial reason. And then, no spoiler, but guess what happens, ladies and gentlemen, in the Boy Meets Girl movie at the end part? I won't spoil it for you. You know what happens. So, some nice performances again, folks that the makeup and costume design was so good you don't even notice. Eva Longoria is in there, and I was like, whoa, really nice performance. And eventually, I'm like, oh, that's Ava. What I really like, I'm gonna get his name right. Lance Reddick plays, the dad who owns the jazz shop. Now, Lance Reddick, so he's kind of a potbelly in this movie, and he's got a little limp to him, and he's running his little record shop / used electronics store, and he's the dad who kind of likes the jazz young man, and that's his role, right? Now, Lance Reddick, we've seen him a gazillion times. He's tall, slim, with a uniform on, some kind of general, and Armageddon's happening, and he has to say, Mr. President, it's time for you to get the nuclear codes. He's serious. He's the maitre d' at the hotel for spies in John Wick. He's just always some super tough. He's either killing somebody or he's not killing somebody. He's someone who's about to kill somebody. He's like, I don't want to mess with him or I'm gonna get killed. So seeing him playing Mr. J, a loving daddy of a daughter, not all uptight like his wife, you know, because daddy seems to have no problem at all of loving eyes from his daughter and this jazz man during the summer of love. Daddy don't care one way or the other.
I mean, daddy partially hired him so that the daughter would have some, you know, somebody to say, he's like, you don't need to, you know. So he was
like, you don't be sitting around in my store all summer.
Yeah.
So that was nice seeing Lance Reddick at that. He'll probably still go back to being, he's not going to be the potbelly, nice old daddy who owns a record shop in the next film. Hopefully he can. Otherwise, he's just going to go right back to the super tall, skinny, black, bald-headed military man who's very stern. Mr. President, satellite's about to crush the planet Earth. We need to call in Agent X. So, you know, how would I feel about it overall? Sylvie's Love. When I got to the end, I said, you know, this is a nice love story with lovely looking black people and lovely scenery, and the jazz was jazzy and the clothes were clothy and the romance was romantic, and you know, they made choices that weren't always that made them look that great or good just because they had love, they were in love with each other. And so as a, you know, as a romance, you know, I thought it was a good film. If I was going to give it, you know, a 4-star system rating, I'm not going to give it a 4 or 3, but it's a strong 2.5. And you know, you want to see a black romance, black love story. Sylvie's Love is a good one for that. We could use some of that in these times and days. As much as I like, you know, a laser to the head of an alien and watching the alien explode, and I do love me some of that. As much as I like a samurai cutting a ninja in half while falling off of a balcony of an exploding castle, and yeah, I like those. I just straight ahead romance story with nothing else in it except wonderful to look at, is welcome to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way. Just again, very well made period, you know, romance movie, beautiful looking cast, wonderful, you know, just wonderful cinematic experience with black characters. Okay with some of the complexities, but then the story goes into places that I'm just sort of like, you know. So overall, I mean, I would definitely, I think it's something that should be watched. I think is you know, something that should be, just I want to see more movies like this to see what else people can mine out of this. And you know, I think a good love story, not my favorite, but overall, I really enjoyed watching it, you know. But those of you who are looking for a story where you're like 100% on board with the characters, or you
right,
know, there gonna be some issues, and that's, you know, that's up to you. But definitely, I recommend.
Mm-hmm. You know. And what I want to throw in too for the audience, you got to watch the credits, which is also another reason why it's not a great film. Is you have to watch through to the credits. Why? Because during the credits, they do some resolve. They resolve the story out in the credits, which is cool. You know, in the sense we're in this modern Marvel era, and plus you and I are film lovers, so we kind of wait and watch the credits. But
you know what
I'm talking about?
You said that.
During
yes.
the credits, they start rolling the credits, and then they start throwing in scenes that actually should have been in the film, was my point, that resolve stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're like, you know, the music fades, the couple's there, the end, and you're like, okay, that's a pretty good love story. You know, like Jeff and Claude said, pretty good. I'm glad I watched it. It was nice to look at. You know, it was a pretty good love story. And then all of a sudden they show another scene, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's nice too. I'm like, well, if it's nice too, put it in the film.
Yeah.
I'm going to like the movie better.
It's so funny now how that's become the thing now. It's like they honestly are tricking everybody to watch every frame of the movie until the very end, and then yeah, I feel shortchanged. Even especially if it's not a Marvel movie. Now I feel I have to wait to the very end. You know,
of a straight ahead standard romance. Yeah. That's
and
not cool.
They've definitely milked it. That's just become a new thing. So, you know.
So you got to do it. It's part of the experience of enjoying the doggone film is that if you're saying, well, I wonder what happens to them and is it going to be great? Well, you got to watch through the credits. You got to watch the credits because they actually show you what else happens to them. And then you go, oh, that's nice. And it's a nice love story. But you're like, but wait a minute, why did I have to wait to the credits to see you resolve characters? Why did I do that? All right. Sylvie's Love. Streaming on Prime because it's a Prime film. Keep going, Prime. Lots of Black love stories. Lots of them. You're not covering them all. Nope. Plenty more. If you're like, oh, I wonder if there are Black love stories. This one's pretty just straight ahead. This one's pretty straight ahead. Beautiful, Black, jazz, New York. Okay. Good.
Yeah. New York. Sun tanning on the roof, doing everything.
Oh my goodness, sun tanning roof. Yeah.
Good. Definitely. Yes.
But like you and I are saying, good. We're loving all that. But we as Black people are like, okay, that's like, that's 3 stories out of the 10 that we could tell you that you don't have yet. That's just good, not great. Just good. Plenty more. A lot of more in there. So come back to the movie review, man. Let us know what you think. We'll give you some lot of more reviews.
That's right. We'll give you more. Okay.
See you next time.
See ya.